Hey guys, today's journey is going to take us down 81 through the Blue Ridge Mountains into the flats of Tennessee. We're going to be going down I-40 and traveling into the heart of Arkansas in the town of Little Rock. And there we're going to talk to a veterinarian in the sport dog world, and what a phenomenal asset this would be to have somebody in your back door, or a connection that you would have with somebody that is into hunting dogs and sporting dogs and understood the medical needs, the nutrition needs, and what it takes to keep a dog in general at its top performance. So today we're going to be talking to a vet by the name of Jonathon Bradshaw, and he really focuses on hunting dogs and their health. And he has two clinics that he runs. He's got Bradshaw Veterinary Services, or Clinic, and that's in Little Rock. And then he has South Arkansas Veterinary Hospital, which is in our Arkadelphia. I hope I pronounced that right, and that's where he runs it with his wife. So, Jonathon, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I am doing great. How about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a little bit of the weather. The clouds have come through and a couple showers. It's kept me off the water today. I know that. So, but I'm doing well, and we are so excited to have you and discuss some of the topics that's going through the hunting world. I don't know if you have the same things come up in your line. Jonathon, you run labs right now, is that right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Yeah, and you're a big duck hunter, and you've been featured in Greenhead, and I'm assuming that Greenhead for a magazine is referring to the greenhead of a mallard duck. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
That's the only duck we try to hunt down here in Arkansas, but we deal with the other ones,
Oh, really? So you just prefer the mallard?
That's right.
Well,
that's right. That's what we're going after.
Well, learn something every day. So yeah, I mean, you've been featured in the magazine, and like I said, you've opened a clinic just for sporting dogs, and then you have another clinic for the array of the other dogs that come in. And it's funny, me coming from the police world too. My very first dog was a lab.
Wow.
I had a yellow lab that his name was Otis, like Otis. He reminded me of the Otis off of Andy Taylor. Just a big goofy dog, and I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but man, he was such a good dog. I wished I had him now and knew what I knew now, because he was a great dog then. He would have been a extraordinary dog now with the knowledge that I have. But Otis, he carried me through a lot of years. Well, he actually lived till he was 16.
Wow.
Yeah, before he passed. He was in service. I worked him up till he was 12, and that's when I was told that I had to switch over to a Malligator, and it ended up with that. But yeah, so my dad actually, we raised labs for a couple of years. Now we don't have, we don't duck hunt or anything. Well, it's picked up. People, they goose hunt now. I guess that's what you call it. But we didn't have the ducks or anything. They were just good dogs, and we had chocolate labs, and Dad was not a fan of the yellow lab. Is there anything to that?
I don't know. It switches around from color to color to most people. Some people they don't like yellow labs. Some people they don't like chocolate labs, and then some people just don't like black labs, and they're looking for anything but. But yeah, it's I don't think there's much to it. But yeah, I mean from a color perspective, they definitely have their tendencies, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So he stayed with the black and the chocolates, and he actually, as the years went by, he kind of went away from the chocolate labs, and we ended up with the last two labs we had were the black labs. Now, what's the There's two different labs, right? There's the Old English lab, which is a little bit heavier and stockier.
Right. Yeah. There's Old English labs or British labs is what we kind of like colloquially refer to them as, and then there's just like American labs. So you got, when you're looking at both of the different types, usually the American labs have a tendency to be the more energetic of the two. With I don't know, they feel like they can handle a little bit more correctional pressure, and so you can kind of take things a little bit further when it comes to a training level to really, really fine tune things. But British Labs have a tendency to be a little softer when it comes to correction and training. So sometimes it kind of limits you a little bit on how far you can go with a British Lab over an American Lab. But golly, I see an exchange, pretty regularly amongst the groups. So that's kind of the going thing. And boy, it seems like one group of, and I'm sure you probably experienced this in your breed of dog, but it feels like one group of people tend to like one over the other, and vice versa, and have a lot of bad things to say about the other one usually. But,
yeah, usually when you get several people from different dog breeds, the only thing they can agree is what the other ones are doing wrong.
No doubt. Yeah. No doubt. Same way.
You're in bird dogs, so over the last 10 years in our canine world, we went from the pointy-eared dogs, your shepherds, your Malleys, your Dutchies, and now because of, kind of the way society has, fostered us into this false persona, we have went to a lot of these agencies that I'm training now, they only want labs or pointers, and we have got 5 German short-haired pointers in our group now. So almost half. So we had 5. We got 5. Half of our group, almost half of our group, are pointers.
Jeez.
And I really like the energy that the pointers put out. The ones that we have. I mean, they're workaholics. They do a really good job. So yeah, I seen that you had a pointer on there too. So
yeah, we see those quite a bit as well. Just from an upland standpoint.
Yeah.
Lots of guys heading out west. We don't have a lot of upland game here anymore, but everybody tends to go out west or up to North Dakota, South Dakota to hunt birds up there, and out to New Mexico and some of those other places. So we see quite a few of those as well.
Yeah. Well, like I said, society has changed what we do, and most everybody is running. Everybody wants, and they're so hard to get, stateside. Well, they're even hard to import anymore because the demand for the pointers and the retrievers are in the law enforcement field is just, it's overwhelming, and they're not producing enough quality right now. The first couple of dogs that we had, 10 years, we started out 10 years ago. We started out with our first pointer, and rock star. And the last several that I've tested in the last, 6 to 8 months are not the quality that the first dogs that we got were. So you can see a difference in it. But yeah, so good. So we have a lot of in common stuff there with the labs, and you're hunting them and you're using their natural instinct for what they do, and I'm just filtering it into finding the stuff that we need to find.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
So, Jonathon, tell us a little bit about your background. Where you went to college. I know that you're a Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah, I definitely am. I grew up in Searcy, Arkansas, which is about an hour north of Little Rock, Arkansas. I kind of went to school there a little bit. We shifted around when I was younger, so I kind of came down to Little Rock, spent a few years in middle school in Little Rock, and then ended up moving kind of back up north to Mountain View, Arkansas, up in the mountains a little bit. We just kind of bounced around a little bit with my family, and we've always been huge duck hunters. My dad, my brother more than any. He's 10 years older than me, and so you can imagine he was duck hunting when he was 16, and when I was 6, I just thought he was next thing to God, walking around chasing around ducks and around there, and so I always chased him around duck hunting, and we always had labs that come along with us. When I was 16, 17 and graduated high school, we moved to Georgia to go to undergrad because I just always knew I wanted to go to vet school. I had a real passion for working on cattle. My grandpa had cattle, and it kind of was I don't know, just one of those fun things. Every kid wants to be a cowboy and everybody wants to be the boss of the Cowboys, which kind of feels like it's a veterinarian a lot of times these days anyway. And so I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. And then when I got there, you start to kind of branch out a little bit after learning some things, and you branch out and you learn new things, and then you learn about that people are actually working on labs and, doing kind of advanced repro stuff and advanced surgical things on dogs that you just duck hunted with when you were a kid. And so I just kind of like attracted. You've got a pretty big attraction to that, along with cattle work. And so when I got out, I did like everybody, just looking for a job immediately. So I started working. My wife was still in vet school, and so I started working at the small animal vet clinic down in Conyers in East Atlanta. And so I saw some things there. And then when she graduated vet school, I wanted to move back to Arkansas so I could be back close to home, just because I love Arkansas and everything about it. Especially love to go duck hunting. The closer I am to the water, the more opportunities I get. So we wanted to move back. And so we were looking around. It's kind of hard to find a veterinary clinic for sale. It's just one of those things that just don't come up much, and you're waiting on some older veterinarian to either retire or somebody looking to kind of hit it rich. But we found a vet clinic in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, that was for sale from Dr. Waymack. He was looking to retire. He's in his 70s when I bought this clinic, and so I thought that'd be a pretty good start. So we got started here, I guess me and my wife worked about probably 5, 6, 7 years here, and then I was looking to branch out. I bought a clinic in Little Rock, in kind of the same scenario, another veterinarian looking to retire. I was looking to kind of get some clients pretty quick, and so I bought that. And now we've slowly changed it over and trying to shift the kind of the veterinary model there to where I cater more towards sporting dogs. So pretty much athletic dogs in general, and working on, more advanced reproductive kind of things. And I can kind of act almost as a concierge when it comes to certain things, so I try to kind of do a lot of research on each scenario that pops up. So if we've got an injured dog, like maybe I can't do the surgery. I'm not a true board certified orthopedic surgeon, but I know, which ones in the state or in the area can help them the best. And so I kind of act in that capacity, and tend to go to a lot of, as many events as I can, be field trials or hunt tests for labs, retrieving sports. And so I tend to go to a lot of those, which take up a lot of the weekends. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm working down in Arkadelphia when I can, and working in Little Rock when I can, and bouncing back and forth as clients need. I don't know, just having a heck of a time.
Yeah, I know we had discussed it a little bit before in one of our conversations. We have purchased 3 of our dogs, our canine. All 3 dogs that we purchased was Malleys, and we purchased them from Little Rock Canine Academy, and Tony Smith run that. Tony has passed away last year, but yeah, we were right in your backyard without even knowing it. And I have to talk to the guys down there and tell them, if they want a good vet for the sports side of it, they should look you up.
Sure. I'd love to help. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
When did you end up with your first retriever, or your first dog that kind of sent you into the duck hunting part of it?
Well, we had my dad didn't have labs up until I was about 7 or 8, and we got a little stubby leg chocolate female named Molly. She'd already been trained, because my family, we are not dog trainers by any means. I don't know, we've always had small businesses, which is why I tend to punish myself by having multiple things going on at once. But we've always had small businesses, so we've left that to the training professionals. But we had a little chocolate female named Molly, and Molly duck hunted with us for probably 5 years, and she ended up having an injury. I had to put her to sleep, but after that, I was typical high schooler, and I thought I could go down to the I believe it was the Saline County Humane Society and pick up a dog that looked like a lab and teach them how to duck hunt. And I did that. I had Dixie for quite all the way up until undergrad. And so we went through college with Dixie, and she could duck hunt a little, but everybody knew when I brought Dixie it was just for fun mostly. And but yeah, and then I got really serious once I moved to Arkadelphia and met a trainer here in town. His name is Jimmy Brown. He's owns Steel Shot Kennels. He convinced me that I needed to get another duck dog again. And after you know how you get when you have one dog that passes, you just get kind of sullen about it. But ended up getting another puppy, and then we went like all out through the HRC world trying to bounce our way up and train and learn. And it's been so much fun to be on that side of it, and then being able to learn more and more. And by no means have I spent years and years in the sporting dog world, but it's really expedited my learning, and I've gotten so much experience just being around the crew there in Little Rock, learning things. So that's pretty much how I started.
Gotcha. So we got you on here for your expertise in the veterinarian side of it. So the first thing that we want to go over is the thyroid issue. We have every hunting blog, every hunting dog site. This seems to be the topic of conversation. Thyroid issues, thyroid issues.
Yeah.
So why don't you give us your expertise in what this actually means, if it is, if it isn't, and what your take is on it?
Yeah, I guess so. So when I started, talking about it, it was only in vet school. Like, this has never come up before then. And, we had a really good professor in vet school that taught us all about thyroid disease and all the ways in which to diagnose hyperthyroidism in dogs. It seemed relatively rare, like it wasn't a big discussion amongst larger breed dogs, it just wasn't a big topic, but we did talk about how to dial in on things. And so as I got out of vet school, there were lots of people, hounds and labs and everybody else coming in saying that they had heard that their dog, could potentially have thyroid disease. Everybody wants to test for thyroid disease. And so it's always taken me aback a bit, because I usually test dogs in-house, and when I test dogs in-house, we've got a bloodwork machine in-house, and it's usually used for kind of screening scenarios. So if we've got a dog that we're taking to surgery, we can run some quick blood work in-house, make sure all the basic things look good. That's what we use it for mostly, but we've got a thyroid test that we can run here in-house. And it can be up, and their thyroid levels can be up or down. It just depends, really. So when you get a diagnosis of hypothyroidism on my machine, I go, oh, okay, we may have something here. But we've also got scenarios where we've got dogs that are just sick and their thyroid levels are low. They call that euthyroid sick syndrome. So you can have dogs that are sick from something else and have a low thyroid hormone, and them not truly be hypothyroid.
So let me ask you real quick while you're talking about this. So when people are bringing these dogs into you that they're saying that has thyroid issues, what is their diagnosis, or what symptoms are they seeing or saying they have that leads them to believe that they need to bring them to you and have them tested? What are they seeing?
They're not performing like they used to, wherever that may be. So say they're coon hunters, right? So they're running dogs at night. They've been running for 7 days, and this dog just slowed down. Can't hunt all night
because he's tired. He needs a rest.
Right. I mean, these are the things, and it usually happens repeatedly for them. They're like, well, this is the third time this has happened. And then I've heard a bunch of people tell me down at the feed store that I need to test for thyroid disease, and I'm like, okay, we can definitely do that. And I do it. I have to walk in there. They're like, no, I want you to do the in-house test. I'm like, okay, I'll do it in here. So I do it in here. It's low. It's like 0.6 or something like that, where you got like a reference range of like 1 to 4. It's like 0.6. I'm like, hey, so thyroid hormone's low, and they're like, oh, I knew it. I'm like, okay, well, hold up, because that's just the beginning of this whole process. Usually what I end up having to do is pull blood, send that in to the lab, and have them test multiple aspects of thyroid hormone, because there's different ways in which it attaches to things and binds to things. So they have to, we're looking to make sure that the thyroid's working correctly. So we've got a few different ways to do that. So we can't just go off of what we got in-house. And I think for a while there were a lot of veterinarians that were using the in-house test to be like, yep, that's what it is. And they're like, well, just what's it going to hurt if I give them thyroid meds? And I'm like, it's not going to hurt. And they're like, let me just try it. And for some reason they try it, their dog gets better, and they think it's that. So they keep them on that forever. And in all reality, it was never thyroid disease. It was something else that was bringing their thyroid levels down.
That was basically just giving them a peace of mind for nothing.
Yeah, because every veterinarian's looking for an answer, right? We're always looking for an answer. We do an exam. We don't see anything except for a tired, frail dog, that doesn't look really healthy. We see that and we're like, well, we'll look for parasites. We'll look for heart issues. We'll look for other things. We're like, well, let's just run some blood work and scan everything, and we'll not see anything on the other tests. And other portion of the examination, we'll see a low thyroid hormone. And so we're like, well, that's got to be it. And for a while, that in-house test is what we tended to go to, especially out in the country. We don't send a lot of stuff into the lab. So, and so they're like, well, what's it going to hurt? Let's start them. And for, their dog does better. Now, why it does better, I don't know if it was the pills that we gave or the situation. Maybe the dog gets well or actually recovers from hunting 4 or 5 nights in a row, or they change foods along with it. So, I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit of a label. I'm not by no means say that I down anything that any other veterinarians do, but a lot of times if I've got a dog that's on thyroid medication for hypothyroidism and they've been treated by another vet, like I want to go back in and make sure that the situation hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I'll pull, I'll pull blood and run like a little triple thyroid panel and send that into the big lab and have them test that, and their thyroid levels are above where they ought to be. And so I'm like, well, we probably ought to pull them off of that supplement. And then they start doing better, for whatever reason. They're actually getting hyperthyroidism at times.
So you said two things there, and, I'm just kind of curious because I like to know. So when you said it has a low thyroid reading, and then there's a hyperthyroid, which it would be high, what's the difference, right? And what would you see in the dog with a low reading? Like would it just be the tiredness and lethargic, not performing? And what would you see with a high thyroid or hyperthyroid?
Thyroid hormone just it runs the body. It really does. So if you're dealing with hyperthyroidism, typically these dogs are not gaining weight like they need to be, and they're essentially being overfed at that point, but their metabolism is just cranking at such a high rate. And so you've got that.
And that would be a hyperthyroid.
Hyperthyroidism.
Okay.
Yes. And usually they're showing a lot of the same signs as well. Like if they're hyperthyroid, they're drinking a lot of water, peeing a lot, aren't having, they're just their body functions just aren't what it ought to be. So you're looking for that. But usually they're really thin when they're hyperthyroid, and they tend to be overweight when they're hypothyroid. That's just one of those tendencies that you see. But there's not a lot of hyperthyroidism in dogs. Like that's just one thing that just essentially doesn't exist. That's more of a cat thing. But when you're medicating them, it's, and I don't know, thyroid medication just gets dealt out so easily these days. Like I think a lot of people are medicated and then not checking back in to make sure that, hey, we may be giving too much thyroid hormone.
And what does that
cause
do?
them to be
Let's say that I put my dog on thyroid medicine because the vet tells me to, and it levels back out, but I keep him on the medicine. Then what happens to the dog? What's going to happen?
They just tend to lose weight and just not perform as well. But usually that takes quite a while to get to that point. So or usually you're just giving them that unnecessarily, and so it's always best to go back in, even if you get the pills. It's always good to go back in for at least kind of get those same 3 thyroid measurements checked every 3 months for at least like a year or so, just to make sure they were given enough, or mainly just not given too much, and then to recheck every year thereafter, because sometimes it just gets to where they don't need it anymore. And that's happened in more cases than I can count on my hands for sure.
Yeah, I had and now that we're talking about this, so I've had dogs my whole life, and I've had a pile of dogs since the mid '90s, and in 2003, 2004, it was actually 2004. I had a Walker dog. It was a Sackett bred. He was directly off Sackett Jr. and he had coonhound paralysis. He ended up getting it. I was up in Michigan hunting. Got bit, got him home anyway. So he ended up with that. So that really changed his fit. He couldn't hunt as long. His accuracy rate went to poo, and so I was letting a guy hunt him. I let a guy take him and hunt him, and he called me one day and he said, "Hey Heath, your dog's he's got a thyroid issue." And I'm like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
Well, the dog was a 70-pound dog, and when I got him back, he weighed 110 pounds.
Oh, jeez.
Feeding the same food, hadn't upped it, hadn't changed it. Of course, back then, that was 2000. That was early 2004. I didn't know anything about it. Well, he ended up passing away. I kind of felt like for me that was more of the roll off from the coonhound paralysis, but I didn't know, and I was told by his vet, and I couldn't even tell you who the vet is at this point, but his vet said that he had a thyroid issue, and that's why he'd gained so much weight and was so big and whatever. So, what do you think about that? Is that something that would sound correct, or maybe that was off a little bit?
Well, he may have had a thyroid issue, but obviously that wasn't. And a thyroid issue, in my mind, I think tends to be, an effect of something else too, Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have quite the research to be able to say exactly how things interact in a sense. But he may have had that thyroid issue, but I imagine that wasn't his primary issue,
Right, and I felt the underlying thing was the coonhound. That was my own, take on it.
Oh, it makes solid sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely feel the same way. But it's good to monitor thyroid. And basically, when we give thyroid medication, we're just kind of like supplementing a little bit, where the body can't do it. Now, for what reason the body can't do it? Oh, there's quite a few reasons there, from a thyroid standpoint.
So, what would that be for a dog? Like, what would cause that?
So the thyroid itself can either have like a primary problem, you could have a problem with so you could have a problem with the thyroid itself, or you could have a problem with how the body recognizes whether or not it's got thyroid hormone in the bloodstream. I'm trying to make it make sense in that level, so you could have more of a regulation kind of issue versus an actual organ that produces the thyroid hormone itself. So it's pretty complicated when it comes down to it. So there's multiple little areas where disease could affect, be it how the hormone itself is regulated, or the actual thyroid organ itself that's going to produce the hormone. So it's hard to say, that's what makes it so difficult. And that's why, vets are liable to just throw thyroid or levothyroxine to replace what's needed versus being able to really dig in deep and looking, because a lot of this stuff is it's on a microscopic level that we have a pretty difficult time digging into, And so, there's quite a bit of research going on. it's ongoing really on taking thyroid samples. It could be a cancerous process. It could be an overproduction process. There's multiple things that can affect how much thyroid hormone floats around in the bloodstream. And so it's definitely not cut and dry. So it's very, very complicated.
Yeah, that's why we're talking to you, because so many people have different opinions on it, and I'm completely illiterate when it comes to it. So is this a genetic issue? Is this a nutrition issue? Is this a housing? Is this something that we are causing, or is this something that's embodied in the dog that we have no control over?
I haven't seen much of a genetic component to this. I really haven't. It doesn't seem to be heritable when we've got dogs dealing with this scenario. I can't say that for certain. I can't say that I dig in super deep when it comes to thyroid research from that level. But, I do know that I don't see anecdotally any sort of heritable component to thyroid disease. Nutritionally, I think there could be a component. We're dealing with dog foods that, we can't be 100% that this is everything that a dog needs, and we can't be 100% that dog food companies are doing, the best thing. We're kind of looking at a lot of rations from a few years back, and trying to make that make sense is, I don't know, a little daunting sometimes. But I feel like the majority of the thyroid disease that we see is due to other diseases.
So you're saying, if I'm, make sure I'm tracking with you right, you're saying that there's probably another underlying issue that if I bring a dog to you and we start looking at the thyroid stuff, in the back of your mind, you're probably saying there's going to be something else here, and I need to figure out what that is.
Exactly.
I got you. I understand that.
That's where I'm at. That's I'm always trying to find something else.
Right.
And
how often are you seeing any type of thyroid issue in your dogs? What's a percentage? Is it 5%, 25%? Are you seeing these issues, or is it pretty much non-existent and we're making them?
I don't see them. I really don't see a thyroid issue especially amongst coon dogs in my area. I really don't. Mm-hmm. And labs especially, I rarely see that. And usually when I do, I feel like I can almost debunk it with something else. Usually there's a secondary underlying reason why they've got thyroid disease, or they're being treated with thyroid medication and ultimately being overtreated with thyroid medications. I just don't see it that often. Right. I wish I could say I did, because I want to be able to find something like that, but I think there's more to it, and I don't think the research is quite there yet. I think there's more to thyroid issues amongst these dogs. I really do.
So is there research being done at this point?
It is, but it comes down to it, there's not a lot of money in this research. The research that's being done tends to be done at vet schools, and it feels like their research goes and kind of directs itself more towards true companion animals at the vet schools that I've been to, and I've seen and I've talked about, not saying that that doesn't have a connection to the dogs that we're dealing with, but I don't know.
Right.
It feels like the research just isn't being done, and everybody's just supplementing the thyroid hormone and moving on.
And a companion animal is a whole lot different than our sporting dogs and our working dogs. That's two different ball games.
No doubt. They're being fed differently, and their exercise levels are completely different. We're looking at just completely different, kind of like they're just in a completely different wheelhouse.
Right. Is there anything you want to add on the thyroid issue? Is there something that, for us as houndsmen or dog, sporting dog owners, there's stuff that we can do, anything that you would add on that?
Yeah. So, I'd say if you take your dog to the vet, and most vets are going to do this or know this, but it's always good to just, it's good for us to know that our money's being well spent when we find on a screening test at the vet clinic that our dog's got a low thyroid level, that we take another $100 and say, okay, let's draw another sample. Let's send it into a bigger lab that can run more fine-tuned tests on the thyroid, which in-house is usually like a total T4. I like that test, but I also like to run like a thyroid stimulating hormone test, so to see how the regulation's going, and then also a free test. So like running multiple tests on thyroid levels after you've gotten that diagnosis. Don't feel like the vet's just trying to run the bill up. Go with it and do it, and make sure that we've got a thyroid disease, because you could be sitting there giving thyroid medication when that's not the true issue, and the issue is something else, and you're just seeing a low thyroid level because they're sick.
Yeah, and I mean, in the long-term things, I mean, I pay $100 up front for blood work, or I'm going to pay hundreds of dollars for the medication over the period of that dog's life.
Oh, yeah. I think there's a lot of medication being given unnecessarily,
right.
And I don't think it's doing any good.
Yeah. So since you're in the HRC world and you're running sport dogs, let's talk about a little bit about nutrition. I know you and I touched on a little bit, and I think we kind of are on the same page. And what's it take to keep those dogs that are swimming and retrieving? And I mean, we know, even as humans, that when you're in the water swimming, you're burning double calories. You're exhausting a lot more energy than being on dry land. So what are you guys running, and what are you doing? You don't have to say what you're feeding, but what protein mixes? Is there anything supplement wise? What are you guys doing to keep your dogs at optimal performance?
Yeah, so I mean, right now we're trying to feed like a 30-20 variety. That tends to be the go-to in our world with our like heavily trained retrievers per se. Mm-hmm. We tend to go with that. Sometimes we'll back down a good bit, especially, I don't know, there's been some like kind of lower, like a 26-16 kind of deal, or we'll go that route if during the summertime when they're not being trained quite as much. Supplement wise, we don't do a lot of supplements, I'd say. There's some things that I've learned from other veterinarians in the nutritional field about supplement wise, like hydration wise, mm-hmm. training in the heat kind of stuff that we've done a little bit of glycerol.
Yes. Yeah.
Those sorts of things, and like just, I don't know, like a little bit of energy boosts like prior to running and things like that on these longer sessions where you've got 3, 4, 5 days going and they need a little bit of a boost. You feel like they're getting tired. They're a little less responsive to handling and things. They're just flat out getting tired. We'll go that route. Most of the 30-20 varieties tend to have enough calories in it to keep their weight up and to keep their muscle levels where we need them to be. So, I mean, usually that's what we're doing here lately.
Yeah, so and that brings me to my next kind of shock and awe question, because I know I responded on I think it was on Coonhound Conversations here a while back. Somebody had posted that, feeding your dog the high protein to 30-20 was basically a killer, that it was burning their kidneys up and it was too hot for them and this and that. And I run, I won't tell the feed that I'm running, but I run 30-20 for my police dogs. Most all of our group are running 30-20. My hounds, I'm actually running 30-25 or 32-32. I have a 17-year-old Walker mixed female who lays around the house at this point, but she has been fed an array of food over her lifetime. But for the last 10 years of her life, maybe even 12, I've been feeding her 30-20. To this day, she eats 30-20. I haven't backed her down, and I mean she's as healthy as a 17-year-old dog can be. She's losing her hearing a little bit, and her back end, her joints and stuff. And I want to talk to you about joint issues here in a little bit, but her joints and stuff are definitely some arthritis in them. But other than that, I mean, she's as healthy as a 17-year-old. So what's your take
Yeah.
on feeding the higher protein, the higher fat content, and just what do you think about it?
I've seen a lot of older dogs being fed 30-20. I don't think it ever causes any issues. I again think there's other things going on that causes kidney disease that we're not taking into consideration. I don't know. A lot of these dogs are exposed to a lot of environmental things and the potential for a lot of environmental toxins. So I think that plays a role in things as well. Like when they're dealing with dogs with kidney disease, I definitely don't go, oh, what have you been feeding? Oh, you've been feeding 30-20. Oh, you've burned their kidneys up. Like that they're able to deal with those levels of protein in their diet, no doubt. I don't really like claim to saying that any of that is causing these issues. But
yeah, I've never believed it myself, and I'm no vet by no means, but I have always felt like there was something else there. Kind of what you're saying about the thyroid issue. If a dog's got bad kidneys, it's probably was there already, and it's just coming up now. And if you want optimal performance out of your dogs, I say this all the time, and I say it with the group that I hunt with, and I say it with my canine guys. You get in what you get out what you put in.
Okay.
If you put in trash, you're getting trash out. Your dogs aren't going to be able to run as long and as hard. That high protein, it's helping their joints. It's keeping their muscles where they need to be. It's providing the protein for them to build muscle and to exercise it. I mean, I've always felt that way. I don't buy into some of the stuff that people say, and I know that everybody's different. Like you said, every dog's different, and so on and so forth. But I have never been one that has bought into that saying or that myth. I guess we could call it a myth that the higher protein burns your dogs up. I don't believe it, and I've done my dogs this way for years, and I've never had any trouble. Knock on wood. I may have a dog that pops up tomorrow that ends up having some other issue that comes out, but I always believe what you put in is what you get out of it.
I don't know. And some of these things, I mean, and God bless them, some of these things, you've got a situation where your dog is in kidney failure and you're looking for some reason. And, I feel like that happens a lot. You're trying to find, well, why did there's no reason my dog should go into kidney failure. I don't know of anything. The only thing I do know of is you've been feeding him that high protein dog food. So and I think that could potentially be, I mean, I just don't think it's it. I think, if they have a compromised kidney to begin with, and then you start to feed them 30-20, that's a problem. I'm not, if a dog's in kidney failure per se, we're definitely not going to feed that, but I just don't think it's the root cause.
Right. Well, like I said, I feel exactly the way you do. I feel like that's not it, and I'm within 20 minutes of Virginia Tech, which is a really good veterinarian school, and they do a lot of research. And we take our place dogs there in the emergency situation. Some of our local guys take their dogs there to be do their checkups and get their shots, and we have discussed that with the doc over there several times, and she is adamant that it has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with
not
it.
At all.
So we're on the same page. So something else.
We're looking for a reason.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. Yep. And sometimes we don't look hard enough. We just find a scapegoat, and that's what we go with, like the thyroid issue and the kidneys being burned up. So I'm with you. So on your labs and your bird dogs and general retrievers, what about joint issues? I know that when I run my dogs hard, that a lot of times, especially before I get them in really good shape, their joints will swell up, and most of the time it's in their front joints. And I know if the guys that are hunting hard, especially your big game hunters that are traveling a lot of ground and you're getting in and out of the rocks and the timber cuts and stuff, I didn't see it as much in my coon hounds, or I don't see it as much as my coon hounds. But what's your take on the joint issues, and how do you guys deal with it on the retrieving side, and what are some things that maybe we can do to help our dogs not have those issues?
Yeah, I mean, so there's always a debate too. Like, a lot of guys are starting joint supplements fairly early, maybe even before they feel like their dog's dealing with any sort of joint pain. There's a 50% over here and 50% over there comes to that. Like, do we start joint supplements early? I really don't think it's a problem. I tend to go ahead and start joint supplements if I feel like maybe their conformation's a little off or their joints are taking a lot of abuse. So especially in I don't know, around here in rice fields, when you've got a dog that's a guide dog and going out retrieving 20 or 30 ducks a day in a rice field, maybe 100-yard retrieves. There's a lot of like sticky mud, a lot of nasty situations where they're putting a lot of pressure on their joints. Those are the dogs that we see the most issues with. Mainly like elbow issues is where we're seeing stuff at. That's a lab specific kind of deal.
Right. And
a lot of people are going back saying that there's a heritable component to it, which that's another topic. But, what I'm doing, I'm starting joint supplements fairly early. I don't see an issue starting them, when they hit adulthood, that 2 or 3 year mark, like go ahead and starting that in. I usually use like Cosequin or Dosequin, which has got glucosamine, MSM, and all those sorts of good compounds that the joints need. I'm doing that quite a bit. I've kind of started switching because I've seen some anecdotal evidence. There's a new product out called Regensa, and it's kind of a different form of glucosamine, like organic chemistry wise. And where some dogs, especially dogs that have had joint issues, they're like showing signs of lameness and looking like they hurt. We switched from like a regular joint supplement to this newer form of glucosamine, and man, they have like really gotten a ton better. So that's been pretty exciting. They've done and there we go again, like there's not a lot of research out there. Most of it has to be like anecdotal, but they've done a lot of like rat research in some of these research places with joints and looking microscopically at joints with certain scenarios, and they found that particular type of glucosamine's a little been better. So I definitely add that in. I'm doing joint supplements pretty early. I'm doing like fish oil, fish oil capsules, omega-3 fatty acids, doing those pretty much every day. So like 3,000 milligrams of fish oil, just once a day in their food. And trying to keep them going from that.
So you're just dropping the capsule in the food?
Yep.
Yeah, I know. I go to Petco. Kind of, they sponsor. They help us as far as in the police world, and they have the bottles of the fish oil that we can just squirt. Mm-hmm. So I'll go get me a bottle of that and squirt it in my food, and I see it in the coat more than the joints because I don't see the joint physically. I can't see inside what it's doing, but man, it'll shine those coats up really quick.
No doubt. Yeah, there's a lot of like human research with omega-3s and joint supplements, and they use it a lot in human orthopedics for joint issues. It tends to help a lot with people, so I can't help to say that it can't hurt. Yeah,
right. For everything. When you're giving these supplements for the joint, are you doing this only when? And I mean, like our seasons, they come and go. Like my dogs are pretty much out of season right now. They run around the yard. We may take a run here in the evenings here and there, but that's it. So would I want to do this year round with them, or would I want to start a month or so before the season come in and do it? What would be your recommendation there?
I mean, I think they're able to get rid of any excess fatty acids. So I mean, in my book, I would want to do them year round, irregardless.
Run them year round.
So if you're there, it never hurts. They're able to excrete and get rid of any excess, and it's not too terribly expensive. And if we're looking out for joint health, it's definitely something that the body needs plenty of. And I don't know, with dog foods, we can't guarantee that they're getting everything they need there from in that regard in most dog food, people will say that we can, but I don't know. I've seen how dog food's made, and some things slide to the left or slide to the right. So I want to make sure that my dog's getting what it needs, and so I tend to give that. But I see quite a few dogs with elbow issues, and so I'm always looking out to prevent that, and I just really watch for that. So I tend to add a lot.
Yeah.
Add a lot of fatty acid in their diet just to kind of help with their joints for that regard. But it's tough to say. And if you've got, some dogs like owls, like some hounds, some lion hound kind of dogs out there that are in that rough terrain, like, I know I would have them on fatty acid supplement like every day. I imagine they try to anyway, but they are dealing with some pretty intense climbing. I know I've spent some time out there climbing those mountains. Well, my joints hurt too.
So the omega-3 fatty acid, are you buying the human one, or are you buying them specifically for the dog? Or are they both the same?
I'm buying I feel they're the same.
Yep. I can go to Walmart and pick up a bottle of the 500 and we're good.
Yep, that's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, and that is pretty cheap. I think you can get a bottle like that for less than $20.
Oh yeah, easy.
So
easy. Yeah, that's what I would do. That's what I've been doing.
Right. And the sprains, and I guess we talked about joints, my dogs, their joints will swell up and they'll have a little heat to them, and we know that's a sprain. Is there anything we can do for those? Is there anything we can, do to monitor that, or just a couple days rest, days off? What do you think on that?
If you can handle it, the more time off from the extreme exercise, the better. And the more, it's always tough to say, because I'm always trying to keep them, we're always got a scenario where they got to go back to work, or we got to go hunting again, or we feel like we do, but if you have the opportunity to take them off for 4 to 6 weeks of anything like, intense, that would be the best thing to do. With like limited exercise, I have a tendency just to do anti-inflammatories and rest. I don't tend to do ice or heat in any scenario. I just tend to do as much rest as I can conjure up anyway.
Yeah,
a lot of times that's the ability to do that's kind of limited, so we just try to do as much as we can.
I had an old timer that I used to hunt with who was, he talked about a guy who could raise pups and train pups. He was very, very good at it. He would only hunt about 3 days a week, and then he'd put his dogs up to rest. And every day that he got his dogs out, he was catching game. And by the end of the season, most of the other guys' dogs are run down. They're done. Yeah. They can't, they can run game, but the catching part is starting to fade away because they're just physically drained. And he never had that problem. And a lot of the younger guys never understood why he didn't hunt harder. And he was hunting smarter is what he was doing. And
no doubt.
He was giving his dogs plenty of rest. He'd hunt 3 or 4 days. Sometimes he'd hunt 4 days a week, but he was always giving his dogs time to recover. And I think sometimes we push our dogs so hard that recovery time takes longer and longer because we continue to push them and push them and push them.
Oh yeah. It can be a problem. I feel like I see it every other day, where we're trying to continue to go, and the dog wants to go. That's the whole deal. Like,
they're going to go. You turn them loose,
they're going to go.
Yeah.
But you got to physically just be like, nope, not today.
Yeah.
Not today.
I've seen some of the guys that I hunt with that I shake my head when they drop a tailgate and they turn them loose, and they literally, I'm like, there's no way that dog can go. And they're like, yeah, he's ready to go. He's ready to go. And you turn them loose, and 200 yards, they're laying down, and they got to walk in there and get them. And then they get aggravated because they had to go get their dog. And I'm like, man, like, that dog is spent. Like, he made a 20-mile race yesterday, and he made a 17-mile race the day before, and you put him on 2 different bears 3 days ago. I was like, what do you expect? But, yeah, you got to give them some downtime and give them some time to recoup. It's just like us. The older in age I get, the more downtime I need, that's for sure.
No doubt. Even me, nobody really understands why I have multiple retrievers. There's really no need for me to have, but there is. I'm not going to take the same dog, and I hunt a lot, so I'm not going to take the same dog every day. I mean, if I had to swim across 100 yards over there and back and do that even just 6 times, I'm done. You know, I need a little rest. I can't handle that. You know, you got to swap them out and be prepared.
Yeah, and I have done that as I've gotten older and a little bit smarter. I'm not going to say I'm tipping the iceberg yet, but you know, I've got enough dogs that, you know, I can lay 2 or 3 up today and take 2 or 3 tomorrow, and I can switch them back and forth. And I tend to do that a lot more than I used to. I thought that if I had 8 dogs here at the house and in the kennel, I had to have 8 dogs with me, and I realized the importance of not doing that now. And
Right.
you know, I've come to the point in my life too where I love to catch game. I love to watch the dogs work, but I also know that if I don't catch a bear today or a coon tonight, it's not the end of the world. I got tomorrow.
Right.
So
Exactly.
I think a lot of that comes with, you know, just time and mentally changing your thought process and where you're at and where you've come from. So, well, Jonathon, I sure do appreciate you being on here. And I mean, going over the thyroid issue, I mean, it's, like I said, it's a hot topic. I've talked to my vet here, and he has the same exact outlook on what you just told us, is that a lot of times it is not, and that's the easy way out. So we hand them some medication, and next thing you know, they're all better. And then I don't know if people follow up or not. Well, like you said, the vets are always wanting to do follow-ups, and I think a lot of times because of the money issue, you know, we have a tendency not to do that because, you know, I'm not going on paying another $150.
Sure.
You know, and I know some people's probably not in that position to be able to do that, but yeah. So I appreciate you taking the time. I mean, it was a pleasure to get to talk to you, and hopefully, if we have some other medical issues that come up with the canine or the dog, the hounds and sport dogs, that, you know, we can give you a call and get you back on here and get your opinion and take on things, and hopefully point us in the right direction.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I really appreciate being on.
All right. Well, we end every podcast with a saying, and Dr. Bradshaw, I will tell you, I hope you find a way.